Welcome everybody to our second part of the Chris Dawson, Lynn Simms. There's so many different names that we could go for this one, but welcome back to another episode. Thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, welcome back everyone. Did you forget what we were doing today?
It took me a hot minute, although we literally just recorded the first part of this episode. So, giving away our trade secrets now.
Can't let your brain fall out just yet.
No, I've got a little bit left in me.
Yeah.
Then I think we might need to go and get some lunch.
Oh, yeah. You
Maybe
could.
have
We
a
haven't
vino.
had a.
I know.
Oh, we're so out of practice with all of this.
That's all right. We got this. I reckon we can manage it.
now that seed's been planted, we're good. I'm right. I'm here. We're going to get this done and get to lunch.
Yay! How are you? I think we were talking in the last episode about how it's been your birthday this week, but how's everything else been going?
Yeah, not too bad.
I feel like the weather has seriously changed. We were just saying then. These outdoor sports over winter are horrific.
Why do we do outdoor sports in winter? I feel like it's an Australian thing of that football, it's a winter sport, soccer is a winter sport. Like they're all outdoors. Like why are we not putting our winter, our cold sports, our outdoor sports in summer when it's nice to be outside?
Yeah, I don't know. But the kids bloody love running around in the rain and the mud.
I'm dreading tonight, standing around at footy training.
Yeah.
It's going to be so cold.
It'll be so cold. At least it's not wet. It's not going to be raining tonight, but we will have weeks where we'll be standing in the absolute pouring rain while they're training or while they're playing.
Oh, and the kids love it. Like they love getting in the mud. But I don't.
I'll
just put that out there.
Oh, no.
No, I'm not here for that.
No thanks. It's just freezing. It's horrible.
Oh, it's awful.
Hey, on the note of it being cold, and it's particularly been cold overnight the last few nights especially, tell me this. Are you one of those psychopaths that sleeps in socks?
Maybe.
Oh, are you really?
Okay. My feet control my body temperature entirely.
Right.
If my feet are hot, I am hot. If my feet are cold, I am cold.
Okay.
So in summer, there is nothing I hate more than socks on in bed. I am with you on it in summer. But when I get to this cold weather in winter, I have to have nice socks warming my feet up.
The thought of it.
Yeah.
The thought of it makes me want to vomit.
And the thing is, in summer, I'm with you. I am with you. But when we get these cold weather, I have to. My feet literally, if my feet aren't warm, I am not warm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't like having cold feet.
Yeah.
But I cannot. I cannot go to bed with socks on.
I think what my issue is in winter is I'm one of those people who sticks my feet out of the doona.
Same.
And I can't stick my feet out of the doona and keep them warm unless I've got socks on them.
But don't you regulate your body temperature by putting your foot out a little bit? So this is
this is the thing. I stick my feet out not for regulating my temperature because of just habit of having to stick my feet out, I think.
Okay. Interesting. I can't also wear long pants to bed.
Oh, yeah, I wear long pants to bed, yeah.
Okay.
I actually prefer them to the shorts, yeah.
It's really hard to find pajamas that are shorts with a long sleeve top. That is in the winter.
That's wrong. You just don't wear
in the winter
sleeve tops with shorts.
Oh, no, but you can find sets. I've got a really nice Bond set that's like that. Yeah. In the winter, I do like a long sleeved top because
your
I can
arms
put
are
my
out.
arms out.
Yeah.
But then the way I regulate my temperature is by sticking my foot out. And the longer my leg goes out, obviously the cooler I need to get.
The calculations.
It's very scientific.
I'll get Mace onto the mathematical equation of how much leg it takes to cool
Could he?
down.
Could he please?
I reckon he
And
totes
what would
could.
be my ideal bedroom temperature? I actually don't know what that is.
Yeah.
What would be my ideal bedroom temperature where I can leave my legs in the bed all night but not actually get hot?
Yeah.
Thanks, Mace. That'd be
I'll
great.
get him onto it. He'll love the problem solving.
But I also then in the winter like a blanket on top of the doona that I can then kick off.
Nah, because that just irritates me because it never goes where you want it to go, and I would just lose my mind over it. Yeah. No, a doona. Yeah.
Okay.
And I've got to have something on me no matter how hot it is.
Oh, I'm a little bit like that. I don't like even on a really hot night, you need a sheet. Well, it's too, like, you're so exposed. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like hiding under something.
Yeah, I do. I like to pull something up and over me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if you've got the air conditioning blasting a little bit cooler just so that you can have your sheet on.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Agreed. I agree with that.
I spend a fortune on the air conditioner being on just to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's worth it. Worth it. But yeah, the thought of these, oh my God, these cold days out in the, I hate feeling cold. I hate it.
In the core, it's like, it's the worst. And I was outside at work yesterday and I'm like, it's just happened. Like it's that crispness in the middle of the day where you go, like, because I know it was a couple of weeks ago, I think we were standing at footy training. We were like, here it comes. Here's that evening crisp, but during the day crisp. Oh God,
you know that's a change in the season. Yeah. Although this weekend is going to be really nice. It's going to be 23 and sunny both days.
Oh well, I'll take that.
Yeah. We've got Mother's Day coming up this weekend, so that's nice.
And, Mother's Day, you mean footy?
Yeah, footy. Oh my God, 2 games of footy each.
Yeah,
and family commitments, but that's what it's all about.
Being mums, that's what you do.
Yeah,
I've got to do the dog poo pickup for footy this week. I'm on sweeping duties.
Oh, it is so funny. So our club roster, if you're at home, you get rostered on to do it's called a ground sweep, but it's literally just picking up dog shit that's on the oval, which, I mean, it's well appreciated by everyone.
Absolutely. So, but who are these evil people who are not picking up their dog shit?
Total dickheads.
On the kids' footy oval.
Yuck. Yeah, it's just crazy. Yuck. We don't generally have to do that because I volunteer every week in a different capacity. You shouldn't have to do
anything else when you volunteered for that.
Peter's happy to do like umpire, what do you call it? Goal umpiring or the umpire escort or things like that. He doesn't mind doing that.
Yeah.
Or timekeeper or whatever.
Yeah.
But we tend to not have to worry too much about the other jobs. You're welcome, Peter.
Oh, totally. I mean, I'm grateful because there's a couple that we know that have volunteered permanently to do the ground sweep for our team.
Oh, cool.
So they're on every week, but they're still like the two of them are happy to do it together, like husband and wife. And so we don't actually need anyone else doing it, but I've been rostered on to do it because they're still getting a second person on the roster. But I'm like, so they keep telling me, don't worry about it, you don't have to do it. Like, we'll do it. I'm like, but I feel bad, like, if I don't at least show my face.
I'll show up. I'll come 10 minutes
They might
early.
try and make me do something else.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, canteen duty or something.
I didn't mind doing the canteen.
Yeah, I haven't done canteen yet, actually.
Haven't you?
No, I haven't been given that job yet. So, I don't mind helping out.
Canteen's fine, but
picking up dog shit. Yeah.
Fun
it's already
times.
hard enough on Mother's Day to get there.
Well, this is one of my friends, Erin. She's got a couple of kids in Ollie's team, and the team manager put out a thing during the week saying, "Hey, we actually just don't have anyone rostered to canteen for first and second half this week.
Yeah,
any volunteers?" And I see Erin at BFT every morning. She's like, two of the dads need to volunteer for that. On Mother's Day, there shouldn't be mums in the canteen.
No.
And I'm like, why is it always the mums who do the canteen and the dads that do the goal umpiring or whatever?
Yeah.
Come on, guys. Pull your fingers out.
We're beyond the gender stereotypes, peeps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think on Mother's Day particularly, it should be the dad stepping up.
Yeah, for sure. But nobody's volunteered yet. So
are you serious?
I'll just watch
none of the dads have come into the group chat and gone, yeah. Like
No. So I'm just going to wait for that to pan itself out.
Floors me. I thought we'd moved past this.
Yeah,
No.
Oh, anyway, I've got a few shout outs for today.
Yes.
So we've got Katrina Jenner and Nick who have been commenting. I think they were Instagram messages that we got. And I'd also like to shout out to an ex-work colleague of mine, actually. Her name is Di. And I went away with her a few weeks ago on that cruise. And she knew so much about our episodes. Like, I can tell she was super into it and loved listening. So thank you, Di. Thank you, Nick and Katrina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. Do you find that people are coming up to you and saying things like people in your real life and you're like, I didn't know you listened? Oh.
Definitely. Oh, yeah. I've got a particular work colleague that I actually didn't realise. I knew she knew we were doing the podcast and that sort of thing, but she's actually really into this.
Oh,
and,
do you want to shout her out?
Yeah, so Mel, she knows, she'll be listening, I'm sure. And she came to me going, I didn't even know you were on socials and now I've found you on there. And I see her name pop up, with likes and stuff on things now. And I'm like,
nice.
oh, yeah, she's here. And she knows, she's into it. She doesn't really talk about it much at work, but I can sense that she's got some interest and got some things to say.
Thanks, Mel.
We'll chat, Mel. We'll chat.
Yeah. Just corner Meg in her office one day, and
as they all do.
She'll have no end of things to talk to you about.
Try and separate the two, but no, happy to chat.
Love it.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about this in the last episode, but our 50th episode is coming up very, very quickly, given that this is episode 46. So we are putting it out there to our listeners to give us suggestions of what you would like us to cover for our 50th episode. We want it to be a bit of a milestone.
Yeah.
For us, we think 50 episodes. That's incredible.
It's huge.
We're really proud of it, and we want to sort of mark the occasion with something special that everyone wants to hear and have us research and listen to. So we're not sure whether we want to go down something a little bit lighter, like a celebrity type case, or we're totally 100% open to everyone's suggestions. So send them on through. You can DM us through Instagram. You can contact us through Spotify, through the platform there, or Facebook. Let us know.
There's so many places to reach out, or even just shoot us an email.
Yep.
truecrimebesties@gmail.com.
Please do.
Yeah.
We're here for it.
Oh, yeah. Love it. No, loving getting all the messages. And it's growing, and I am struggling a little bit to keep up at times, but I get there eventually. If I haven't responded, just give me some time. We get there. Yeah. Sometimes my days get busy during work and I see them pinging through and I want to do it, but I've obviously got other things I have to do.
Bloody responsibilities. It's all a bit much.
So sometimes I might leave you on red. So I'm sorry. Yeah. I might have time to read it, but not reply. Yeah.
Doing our best to keep up.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Juggling it all, but it's all good. We get there.
That's it. Thank you to everybody.
Absolutely.
All right. Shall we delve into where we're at? So if you haven't listened to last week's episode, please go back and do so, because it gives all of the background, and we're kind of at the point now where we've got an investigation starting for Lynn, well and truly after
well overdue.
She has gone missing. So, go back, listen to the first episode if you haven't.
Yeah, if you don't know this case, then you really need that backstory. Otherwise, none of this is probably going to make sense.
No, that's exactly right. That's it. So where are we starting for this one?
There was a little bit of information we did forget to mention that I just really want to throw in there today, that we discussed how, so obviously Chris Dawson, his wife Lynn, is missing and he's divorced her and married this young JC. I believe she was 18 when they got married. She turned 18, so it was legal, but... Anyway,
legal but morally questionable, ethically questionable.
And as we discussed, he moved her in very quickly into the family home, and it moved very quickly in terms of them getting married. Within a couple of years of her disappearance, they were married. But one thing we didn't mention was the fact that when they did marry, the wedding rings that they used were Lynn's. They had resized them. And
the engagement ring and the wedding band.
Now, the fact of the matter is that he had those in his possession even says something to me, because I know the marriage was on the rocks, but Lynn was very much trying to keep that marriage together. Would you not think that if she disappeared that she would not have been wearing them?
Yes, and her friends say that. She wasn't one of these people. You know how there are people who take their rings on and off, like they might take their rings off to wash the dishes or something. Yeah. I've never been that person.
And some people, honestly, they have jobs or whatever, for whatever reason, that they don't wear their rings.
Yeah. But
Lynn was not that person.
Nope. She wore her rings all of the time. So even the fact that he had her rings in his possession is suspect.
Yeah. And then resize them and give them to your little...
Oh, it's disgusting. It's so disrespectful. Even...
Disrespectful to JC as well as to Lynn.
Women.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, second marriage, all that sort of stuff, if, in the context of just literally yes, your wife has disappeared and you're remarrying or something, yep, you're entitled to remarry and entitled to move on in your life, but you would not use your ex-wife's rings to marry that person.
I went to uni with a girl who was proposed to with a ring that her fiancé had bought a previous girlfriend and proposed to her with, and she said no.
100%.
And I was like, no, as in... My friend at uni said yes.
Oh, she said yes.
She then later found out it was the same ring that he'd proposed to another woman with.
I would have said no. You need to go and get new rings.
Oh, my God, yes.
Oh, God.
And also, girls, if you get proposed to, take the ring. They can't take it back. Do something with it.
Mine is sitting there. I need to do something with it. Because the thing is, like, I'm not even want to say they're not jinxed, but, like, you know, they're being part of a marriage and had their life to me. Like, it's...
Imagine, like, you would think an engagement ring's a very personal thing. The fact that it's been reused.
At least melt it down and reset the diamonds. Whereas they just resized them.
Sure. Even that to me is a bit questionable.
Even that is...
Also, you think for their daughters, that's a legacy item. Which they now will never have.
No, especially in that situation where mum disappeared. There was something happened to mum, not as in like, oh, you guys had massive blues and you just separated, like, you know, and that there's ill toward to each other. Well, there was ill toward, but like, you know, well, to the nth degree, like, of, like where it's got real bad. But... yeah, in their minds, of if Chris Dawson wants to stay this, you know, course of, you know, oh, she just walked out and like, and maybe there's something happened to her that we don't know about, like, you know, that's sad for the girls.
Oh, yeah.
They should have something to remember her by. And no, he resized them and gave them to his new, much younger wife because she wouldn't have known any better. Like she probably felt, in fact, I know she would have felt like she couldn't say, oh, I'm not using Lynn's rings. Like that's not gonna she was
happen.
not in a position to be able to have any opinion.
So he's just dictated that yet again and controlled that situation. For what it was.
Yeah, I really wanted to get that out there of like what happened there.
That's an important point. I think that shows a lot about their relationship, who he was, the situation at the time, and how JC she had no choice but to go along for the ride.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So
we left off, I think, at about 1990 where they had divorced.
Yep.
And we're at a point of where they'd been an inquest of into the investigation into the disappearance of Lynn, which nothing much really came of that.
No. So
we're basically now in 1990s where we've got Lynn still missing, no real investigation, full investigation that has occurred.
No, that's exactly right. Nothing has been really done.
No.
And it was decades before things were actually really started to be investigated properly.
Yes.
So I think contextually we can give a little bit around this as well. So we spoke about this obviously in the first episode, and this is something that everyone thinks of when they think of Lynette Dawson, and that is the Teacher's Pet podcast. So in the podcast that came out in 2018, things had started happening in the lead up to that. So I think Hedley Thomas, the lead investigative journalist who produced The Teacher's Pet through his role at the Australian newspaper, he basically he instigated a lot of things even prior to the podcast being released. So him looking into Lynette's disappearance, interviewing people who knew her, it really made people then go, yeah, you're right, this has actually been playing on my mind for decades now, and I do need to do something about it. So it actually sparked a reinvestigation of, well, you know what, it actually sparked an investigation of the case.
Yeah.
So The Teacher's Pet came out and in 2018, and it very strongly suggested that Chris Dawson was responsible for the murder of Lynette Dawson, but obviously they didn't have a lot of proof at the time. And the New South Wales police, you know, it was incumbent upon them then to really investigate this properly and put in a proper coronial inquest and see where all of that information actually led and what they were going to do about it. So it was an interesting time, I suppose.
Yeah. I guess coming onto this case, like obviously as we were saying, the police had not done a lot until there was a particular person that came into this case was handed to Damien Loon, who we've probably mentioned in other cases, I feel like.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
He's
well
known.
Really well known. And he was handed this as a cold case. And I've actually heard him speak about this in a number of different podcasts. And he talked about the fact that this case intrigued him massively. He didn't have really a budget on looking into it. It was just basically one of his cold cases he was handed. But he didn't stay in that particular area for very long in terms of what that was a role he was in. When he was then moved to a different area of the police, he asked, "But can I stay on this one?" It was a bugbear for him that this hadn't been investigated.
So it was handed to him, to Detective Damien Loon, in 1998. There had been, according to him at the time, there had been basically no records
There was
kept.
like one piece of paper in the box, because Hedley Thomas was the same when he sort of walked into this. It was not a lot, because Hedley Thomas actually looked at this well before 2018.
Yes.
Well, so it was actually, he looked at it in the 90s and was like, this is an interest. I know of this case because he actually went to Cromer High.
Yeah.
So he knew
grew
of
up
this.
in that area.
Yeah.
And he knew
of
the vibe of the whole place and all of that sort of thing.
So when he'd first entered into this and gone, what's been investigated, the two of Damien Loon and him had already got to know each other a little bit, and he was like, there's not much to, like, in this, there's been no people, interviewed, etc. And here's the one piece of paper in the box, which was, some very vague information around who was involved in JC and who she was and all those sorts of things, but not
detail.
enough to go, there's a heap here. So at the time, Hedley Thomas was like, oh, I'm intrigued because there is definitely more to this. And there was enough there to say there was more, but no further investigation. So it wasn't until he then later on came back to it. He was like, it was always in the back of his head, I want to do more on this. Mm-hmm. But I think he got caught into, life, took on for him. Young kids at the time. So it wasn't time for him to take this on. And Damien Loon was a bit the same in that he was, as I say, he wasn't actually then even in the role of cold cases. He was doing other work within the police force, but this stayed his case. And every now and then, if he'd get a moment, he'd do a bit on it, or something had come to him. Someone would bring something to him and say, this has come up, that's to do with that case. And he started to gather things. So it was all very slow paced in the background.
It was so slow paced that nothing really happened until 1999.
Yeah.
So 1999, 2000. So
yes.
I believe Damien was working on this in his spare time. Now, what police officer or detective has spare time?
Yeah.
Probably not many of them. So it did take a long time, but he had a gut feeling about it.
Yeah.
So much so. So they ended up conducting a small excavation at the Bayview house. So they lived, the house was in Bayview. We talked about the house in the previous episode. They built it. It was down the road from Chris's twin brother Paul. They did a small excavation at the time, focusing on the pool and surrounds. This was based on information that had been given to them by the neighbour. Again, we spoke about her in the last episode.
Because the pool had some works on it or something,
had some
hadn't
works
it?
done, and for not really, they didn't really know what was happening. They had some paving replaced and nobody really knew why and what was going on.
Yeah.
And they used a ground penetrating radar at the time, and they could see that there'd been a disturbance in soil in that area. So that was enough to get a subpoena to be able to actually perform an excavation.
Yeah.
At this time, they found a pink cardigan, and everyone got really, really excited because pink was Lynn's favourite colour. In fact, at all of the court cases that you can see with Lynn's family, they all wear pink ribbons in remembrance of her. So everyone got really, really excited about this pink cardigan, and unfortunately, it went for forensic testing. It came back and nothing could be taken from it. So it
was found to have rips in it,
it was ripped.
Potentially
it was
knife.
Completely ripped.
Yeah,
it was completely ripped.
But there was talk that could have been. They could sort of see that had been used, like a knife had been used and things, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure of that.
Yeah.
But it's 100%. It was ripped, at least ripped in half, if not. Quite possibly. But forensically, they couldn't get anything of it. They don't even know if it was Lynn's at the end of the day.
If that was tested again in between 2000 and 2025, do you think they'd be potentially more able to be found off it? Or?
I don't know, because it was buried and it was wet. There was a lot of moisture. It was around a pool. There was there was a lot there. I don't know, but thankfully we don't need to know.
No.
So, there was that obviously sparked more interest, this cardigan. It really gave the case a bit of a push, even though the actual cardigan ended up not really going anywhere.
No. Would have been awesome even if they could just find even a picture of Lynn wearing that cardigan, to be honest.
They couldn't, and I think no one had ever seen her in a cardigan like this, whatever. In February of 2001, the first of 2 coronial inquests took place. And this was initiated by the New South Wales Police. But it was still the results of the New South Wales police at the time were still inconclusive. It's not like they were like, yep, we've got hard evidence to say this is what's happened. Deputy State Coroner Jan Stevenson determined that Lynn was most likely murdered by a known person. And the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecutions at the time, didn't lay any charges because they said there was insufficient evidence.
And see, that really was a huge bugbear for Damien Loon because he went to them, and because typically he said in these sorts of incidents where they would say that, he could approach them and say, what's missing? What do I need to get?
Yeah, what do I need to
What do I need to do to make this go over the line to say that you will?
Yep.
They said to him, we can't do that. We can't tell you.
Why?
Yeah, to this day he doesn't know. They were very secretive. They were basically, it's confidential. We can't speak to that.
Wow. In February of 2003, a second coronial inquest began with Deputy State Coroner Karl Milovanovich recommending that the DPP lay charges for murder by a known person. So by this stage, there was obviously enough to have another coronial inquest take place. There'd been enough investigations in this time. So we've had enough of a development. Again, the DPP refused to lay any charges, again stating that there was insufficient evidence to support a criminal charge against any person. So the fact that in the second coronial inquest they've said it is now by a person known is a big deal. The police then, so Damien Loon and his team then, I think they knew what they were focusing on all along, but in keeping an open mind as well, they were investigating all possibilities. 12 years this went on. 12 years. And it wasn't until 2015 where the New South Wales Police Force formed an unsolved homicide unit. God, that was a bit of a tongue twister. Which was led by Detective Damien Poole, and he actually formally reopened the investigation into Lynn's disappearance. So over the next 3 years, the incident was under investigation by this new unsolved homicide squad, and they put together a brief of evidence that they then wanted the DPP to review, and because they thought at that time they had enough circumstantial evidence to at least bring a trial, bring it to trial and bring a charge. Well, sorry, not even charges. Trial, bring a charge against Chris Dawson. But again, it led nowhere. In September of 2018, so going back, so in the year 2000, they did that first excavation of just around the pool. In 2018, so 18 years later, the Dawson's former Bayview property was mapped, searched and excavated, and no further evidence was uncovered.
That search was done, the teacher's pet had been launched, and it was, so Headley was already doing a massive amount of research himself alongside what was going on with the police, that obviously it sparked such huge community interest that there was bigger push to do more. So obviously then, another excavations occurred. It's disappointing nothing was found, but I don't know, I'm not surprised either, because to me so much time has gone on.
And he'd moved from that house.
And they'd moved from that. What year did they move? They must have moved.
It was after 2000.
Was it? I thought it was even earlier than that they moved.
I'm pretty sure when actually, no, I think you're right. Sorry. Even when the first excavation took place, they didn't know.
No, I feel like they did move to like Queensland as he originally planned with her. I feel like they did move, which, I mean, I don't think he's not an idiot. Like, I really honestly think that whatever did with her when she died, and potentially that was somewhere near the pool, but I think before they moved or whatever, I reckon him and his brother would have moved the body.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So the Teacher's Pet podcast actually started in the May of that year.
Yep.
So the first episode was released in the May, and it wasn't until the September that excavation took place. And you're absolutely right. It was due to public outcry because people, even when it was first launched, it was so wildly popular, the podcast, and people really got onto it. And when you launch a podcast like that, you get your armchair detectives. There were people independently investigating this for themselves and coming up with their own theories,
but also
not
more people were going
silent.
Hey, I actually remember this and I've got information to share too.
And this is where like the neighbor comes into play. You know, she's the one who was like, oh yeah, well, these are the things that I remember.
Yes.
You know, that says a lot. But this was, I mean, how many years? Almost 40 years after the fact?
Yeah.
Was it 30-something years? Like, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Crazy.
Oh, you're right, though. It meant more and more witnesses came forward to the police and also to Headley. Like, he interviewed a lot of people who hadn't gone to the police yet. To his credit, he handed over everything when the investigations were taking place, all of his raw tapes, unedited everything, all of his information. Apparently it was like boxes and boxes and boxes.
A lot more than that one piece of paper that was there when he first looked into it.
That's exactly right. So hats off to him, because
absolutely.
without him, none of this ever would have come to the fore.
Nah.
So in December of, was it December?
Yes. December 5.
2018, Chris Dawson was arrested with attempted murder charges with a murder charge. And at that time, was he charged for the carnal knowledge?
No, that came later.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at this stage, he's just been charged with Lynn's murder.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
He submitted 2 bail applications. The first was rejected. The second was granted with a surety of 1.5 million Australian dollars. Committal proceedings then followed in Feb of 2020, like right before the pandemic hit. I think for us, our world shut down in March of that year, wasn't it?
Yep.
So, you know, it just made it through.
Just made it.
He was committed to stand trial in that committal proceeding because he pled not guilty to the charge of Lynn's murder. So at that time, they set a trial date for much later in that year, not knowing what was coming.
Yeah, I mean, you get it kind of there because there is then quite a gap between then and the trial actually occurring. But I mean, this is the sort of trial you couldn't have held it during lockdown.
No.
It wasn't one you could just do online. To me, like that was definitely something that had to be done in court, in person.
It was too big. It was too important.
Way too important.
There were so many witnesses that needed to be called. And I think because the case was still circumstantial.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's all circumstantial evidence that they have because they don't have a body.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think that did a service to Lynn's case.
Yes.
The fact that it was held in person, because you could see people's emotions. You could see the reaction of all of the witnesses and everything that kind of goes along with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you needed to hear directly from people and see them in the court, to me. Yeah, definitely.
Chris's defence, so his brother, Peter Dawson, was a lawyer. Oh, my God.
I really
He's
am intrigued by that.
Still is.
I don't know. I just don't think that it's ethical.
Now, actually.
Oh, yeah. I don't think it's ethical that your brother represents you. I know that there was a barrister who was actually there on the day in the court proceedings who, spoke and was head of it. But obviously he's sitting next to that person and, directing, etc. But I still just don't know that it's ethical that your brother is your legal representative. But at the same time, what the hell? How can... The circumstantial evidence is huge on this.
Oh, absolutely.
As a family, I know you stand by, and this is where I kind of go, I don't think it should be your brother being your legal representative because, okay, you're wanting to stand by your brother and, and be supportive in this situation, whether they've murdered someone or not. As family, you rally, but you rally at the same time as also being, you can love your brother and also know that he's done wrong. And I think that would be an awful position to be in.
But this family were never like that.
No.
They always condoned his shit behaviour.
Yeah.
They knew that he was having an affair with a teenager and helped him hide it. They helped him commit carnal knowledge.
His brother has, whether, this brother in particular, I don't know whether he was participating in those activities or what have you.
Oh.
But probably. But there's not enough, there's not evidence of that. But... you're too close. And because so you have knowledge of him and what went on back then. He legit came to him and said, well, how do I have my 16-year-old child, bride that I want to be with and not lose my money linked up with Lynn? To then have him as your legal counsel, I just don't think that that's right.
No. Although I think about that from the context of, if it was my brother and I was a lawyer and I felt like I had the ability, I
would still be like, I'll tell you who to go to and who I trust to do it for you. But I'd have to sit out.
Help yourself. I don't know. But then I think you're right in that if I'd known that a sibling of mine had done something wrong, you couldn't then ethically represent them because you know they've done something wrong.
This is it. You're actually lying in court.
Yeah.
Because so you're in contempt.
Yourself.
You're perjuring. Yeah. Because he knows. He knows, especially the next trial. He knows that he knows what went on there.
Oh, for sure.
So I just think I find it really wrong.
Prior to this first trial, though, Chris's representation, his barrister, put it to the court that the podcast eroded his fundamental right to the presumption of innocence and his right to stay silent.
Yeah.
And so that there was actually court proceedings in relation to the Teacher's Pet podcast, what that meant for Chris in terms of getting a fair trial and how the court were going to handle that.
Yeah.
So to Headley's credit, they removed all his podcast from broadcast at that time.
In Australia.
In Australia.
So internationally, you could still listen to it entirely. Yeah. Which, I mean, he didn't need to pull it from there because they weren't going to be jurors in this trial, whereas someone in Australia is. I fully get that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Headley also turned over, as I said, all of his research and everything that went with it, which took detectives a long time to go through, but
he became a witness then.
That's right.
In the trial, which would have been really frustrating for him, like in the sense of he's done all this hard work. He is, there was no invested in getting Chris Dawson on this 100, like as anyone really, as equally I would say to a family at that point. He was with them, he was on their team.
Oh, he wore the pink ribbon to court.
Absolutely. But he couldn't then couldn't hear other people's testimony, all those sorts of things. He couldn't actually see the court hearing as it would play out because he was a witness. You then have to be isolated because you can't hear someone else's testimony and then sit and do yours because it might be influenced by it. So he was completely removed until his testimony had been completely done before he could then watch any part of the trial and be a part of it. So that would have been really hard for him. But at the same time, he achieved what he set out to do at the same time. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
he
amazing.
talks about that in the podcast. Yeah, about his experience being in the witness box, and it's not the last time that happened with his further investigations. No. Like he's done many
other cases,
podcast cases after.
But he was in the trial box for like 2 days, I think.
Yeah, and he talks about how exhausting it is, and it's hard to keep in line all of the things. He said he did thousands of hours of research and to try and recall things that were posed to him. Was really draining.
It's draining because you want to make sure you get what you want said, but you've got to rely on other people's questions to do that. So you can't jump ahead and like say things without it being a question to you. But like at the same time, like the courts don't play out how you think they do in movies and stuff.
Right.
Being in the court, there's lots of pauses, lots of like lawyers don't always succinctly ask their questions and they'll rummage through papers and like there's lots of pauses and lots of dragged out bits where as a witness he'd be sitting there going, what's going to be the next question? What am I going to do? And just wait for the lawyer to come and bring that question to you, whether that's both the prosecution and the defence. So it'll be a long bloody day sitting there of questions and then being asked questions, but then like going, nope, restrict that from the record. We can't ask that. And like got to go back again and try and get it out of them another way. It would be exhausting. Yeah. Absolutely exhausting.
For all of the witnesses.
Yeah.
Because members of Lynn's family testified. They submitted, so the prosecution submitted Helena's diary as part of the evidence so Helena was Lynn's mum.
What year did she pass away? Do you remember? It was well before all this, though.
It was well before all this. But she kept an incredibly detailed diary. She wrote verbatim certain conversations that she'd had, and all of that.
Well done to her to do that. I mean,
but that was just her practice. It's not even, she didn't even do it because of suspicions of anything. That
back
was just,
then, like diary and journaling like that was a bigger thing, I think, than it is today.
I'd love to go back. I remember when I was a kid, I used to journal.
Yeah,
I'd love to go back and read them now. I don't think I've got.
I would cringe something shocking. Like, I think I know where. I think I've got all mine actually. I think they're in my garage.
It'd be so interesting to go back and read them. It'd be gross.
Jesus.
Mum's just been horrible to me all day.
I hate my
brothers
mum.
are shit. My brothers are awful.
Oh, God. Oh, it sounds like today.
Yeah, actually, what's changed? Yeah. Not a lot.
Just that how much I don't not hate my mum anymore. Now I appreciate her.
Beyond teenagehood, you're like, oh, yeah.
Oh, crap, I was awful.
It's a rite of passage.
Absolutely.
In September of 2020, Supreme Court Justice Fullerton rejected Dawson's application for a permanent stay in proceedings, which he'd said based on the podcast and the fact that he was never going to get a fair trial.
Yeah.
That was rejected. The judge actually did grant him a temporary stay of proceedings for 9 months to relieve the concerns of fairness sparked by the podcast. So I think this was 9 months where the podcast wasn't going to be available in Australia.
Yeah.
They could, potentially find enough jurors who hadn't engaged in the content, et cetera, et cetera. He appealed that, of course, because that's just what he does.
They do. Yeah.
But the trial was rescheduled then to commence. So he appealed to the High Court.
He kept
went
going
through all of the appeal processes. They all said,
no,
fuck off. You've actually got to face this.
Yeah.
So the trial was then rescheduled to commence on the 9th of May in 2022.
Yep.
So he made, just before that, he actually made an application for his trial to be heard by a judge only, so a judge-alone trial.
Which I think was, I think it was a good move, to be honest, in that respect. I do agree that due to the podcast, potentially he would have struggled to find a jury that were going to be impartial entirely. Yes. So I think that was, but that's an option available to anybody to do that. So, yeah.
In Australia, though, when an indictable criminal offence proceeds to trial, evidence is generally presented to a judge and 12 jurors randomly selected from the
Pretty
community.
rare that we have a judge-only trial here in Australia.
I think in Australia it's very, very rare, but I completely... in fact, I think this is one of the cases that goes to teachings for students, like law students, because it is not that common here.
Yeah.
And for reasons that, for the first time ever, a podcast had actually caused that to happen.
Yeah, and I don't think it'll be the last. I really don't.
And then you think about all of the media coverage for many cases and what influence this case in terms of precedent would give to future cases in terms of any media coverage. It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Dawson's trial was heard by Justice Ian Harrison, who, oh my God, you can listen to his full verdict. It's like friggin' 40 pages.
Yeah, it's really long.
No, maybe
hours.
400 pages.
It took hours to read it into court. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. He's a lovely man, a really kind, empathetic, very fair, very just. His finding had to be airtight, like watertight.
Absolutely. Otherwise, he was going to be criticised endlessly of being influenced by the podcast. So I think,
even though he did state at the start he had never listened to the podcast, he didn't even know what podcasts were.
Love him.
So on the 31st of August 2022, he pronounced that the verdict was that Dawson was guilty of murdering his wife, Lynette, on or soon after the 8th of January in 1982.
Yeah.
Now, is it worth having a chat about what we think actually happened? Because it hasn't really... there's theories everywhere.
Yeah.
But because there's no actual hard evidence, we don't really know what actually happened. But I have a theory about what happened. Do you?
I do. I'd love to hear yours.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think when Chris made Lynn that nice drink that night, he has laced something in there that has caused her to pass out or even potentially that could have killed her. I don't know. He's then perpetrated a murder against her. He's hidden her body overnight and then gone to the pool the next morning with the girls. Whether or not that night he's done anything, I don't think so. I think Lynn's body stayed at the house or somewhere near the house the night before.
I think this is awful in that. Where was JC at this point? Where was she living at that point? We don't know.
She wasn't at their house.
No, she wasn't at their house. No. So I mean, because his brother gives an alibi of him being at his place. I honestly think whatever's happened with Lynn has happened, and I reckon he's left those two young girls asleep.
See, I reckon that happened the next night.
You reckon?
Yeah, because Helena took the two girls home from the pool and they stayed that night with her at Chris's insistence.
Yeah.
So I think he's hidden Lynn's body.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's moved the body that night. I think he's done that, gone running to his brother.
Right.
And I reckon he was at Paul's house that night, but Lynn was not alive back at her place. I think he's confessed to Paul what he's done.
Right.
And then that's where the two of them have come up with this
plan.
We'll sort this out. Yep. Just leave it where, like, she's right where she is right now. You know, like tomorrow we're going to plant this seed with people and that she's going to disappear, like, you know, and then we'll sort it out from there. I reckon that's sort of how that part of the evening played out.
And then they've moved her body the next day, I think.
Yeah, that next night where the girls weren't there and stuff, Paul and him have then done whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is just what we think. This has never been necessarily proven.
I really think what has happened is that he in his mind has realised that JC is pulling away. He's got to bring her in more to be able to keep her. So he needs to get Lynn out. And I think that, he's given her, he's like, in that evening, he's like, what am I going to, like, it's built up to some sort of, like, he's had the marriage counselling session and, like, I'm not fucking doing this. Like, you know, I need to get her out of here. And
well, you know what? The counsellor probably saw something in him that he didn't like being reflected back at him, you know? So he was like, I'm not fucking doing that again. No. I'm not being told that I've done something wrong here.
I'm not taking accountability here.
No, that I shouldn't hit my wife and I shouldn't be, you know, off fucking a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I reckon that counselling session was quite possibly quite surface anyway, being a first session. But even at that, he would have rejected doing any more of that.
Yeah.
So I think that it's all escalated for him that day of his frustration of I'm not getting what I want.
So do you think it was premeditated at that point? Because the day that, you know, we think she was murdered, they did have that counselling session. Lynn spoke to her colleagues saying they were holding hands and
I have a theory here. So this is my theory that Lynn, in her mindset, things are moving where she wants them to. Right? They're going to have their marriage back on track. He's given her that drink. And I think that Lynn going, I'm going to make sure this marriage stays on track. We're doing so well. I think she's made advances.
Okay.
Like, you know, let's have some special time and literally cement this fact that we're going back on track. He wants a young flirty thing. I'm had a few drinks. I'm loose here. And I think he has gone, oh, fuck no.
This wasn't my plan.
And then I think that's become a push and shove and it's gone from there.
Okay.
That's what I think would have played out in that scenario of her thinking one way of where this is heading and he's entirely actually going the opposite direction, that has then imploded on them
and
in
so
that evening.
do you think that escalated that night?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think he'd planned to do it?
No, I don't think planned as in like...
Yeah, that night I'm going to kill her.
I'm going to kill her. Yeah. I think that it's eventuated to a point of like, fuck, she wants this... She thinks this marriage is going to get fixed and I don't want her attention, and maybe he's got physical with her and that physical rejection has become, and she's maybe fired back at him of like, how dare you, I thought we were fixing this, you know, like, and with her being a bit intoxicated and all those sorts of things that he's created. I think it's all just blown up from there and then he's taken it that whole next step. Yeah. And it's unfortunately ended up where it did. So still intent in terms of what he's done, but not premeditated hours, days prior. Yeah. I do think it's certainly not defence or anything like that to be called into it. I don't think, because he's certainly a lot stronger than her, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she wasn't a big lady.
No. But, I mean, the girls were young. They wouldn't know what was going on. So, and I agree with you that he's then put the body somewhere at that point, but nowhere necessarily permanently, and gone straight to his brother. Oh, I've just killed her. Fuck, she's dead. Like, you know, and he's done, we'll sort this out.
What kind of
us good blokes.
What kind of culpability does the sister-in-law have too?
Yep.
Because
I bet she knows everything.
I feel like she knows everything.
Yeah.
Because, I just don't see how she couldn't. And even if she didn't know, she knew intimately
enough.
What was going on. She knew enough. She knew intimately enough what was going on between Chris and Joanne, because fucking hell, they'd been housing Joanne. Mm-hmm.
Where's the fucking sisterhood?
So many, exactly. And why are we protecting these toxic men?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Because, I mean, I dare say that she was in a very similar situation to Lynn. I dare say Paul would be physical with her potentially, and abusive. I don't know.
There's nothing out there to say that, but he was absolutely, we know now, he was what's come out, women, but who were young girls at the time, have come out to say that Paul was absolutely having multiple inappropriate relationships with young girls as well.
Chris's somewhat only redeeming feature in this is that he's stuck with one. There's not evidence of him doing this to multiple girls, I guess, whereas Paul, in his scenario, he was jumping from girl to girl.
I honestly don't know what's worse. I think what Chris did was worse.
I don't know if there's a worst. I think they're all
right.
awful.
They're both just
awful, and but different scenarios, as to how they've gone about their awfulness. Yeah. But I lump Marilyn in there. I do think that whatever maybe she didn't know all of it. I think she knew enough to not question and not voice things. And I reckon,
could you not question it?
I know that level of loyalty is actually is toxic and not right. Yeah. How could you know someone like Lynn from she would have known her from the age of 16.
Yeah.
They were all around each other from such a young age, and know that someone has done some harm to her.
And they were friends. They were really good friends.
They were close.
Sisters-in-law.
Yep.
They lived literally down the road from one another.
Yep.
They're brought up, I think Paul and Marilyn's kids were slightly older than Chris and Lynette's, but they had their families together. They were close.
Mm-hmm. Your children's auntie has died at your brother-in-law's hands.
Yeah.
And you don't speak up?
No.
So awful. No, she's piled in there as a piece of shit too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Throughout the 40 years of, from when Lynn disappeared and now we know, was murdered, up until the time that the case went to trial, there were 12 witnesses that provided evidence in the years prior who had passed away.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was that many.
They lost so much.
Yeah, which is, it's not surprising in that time frame.
40 years.
Yeah.
And among them were,
So does that mean any of their, if they've given testimony prior, written, or, that there's documented evidence, can that still be read into court?
Yes.
Yeah.
So some of it was admissible. Obviously they must have had
just
to
can't
take
be cross-examined, can it?
That was the problem.
Yeah.
So they had to take it article by article, and obviously the defence would argue as to why it was not admissible, etc.
Yeah.
But things like Helena's diary entries, they were allowed in, and they were part of what built the circumstantial case against Chris.
I guess it's up to the police officers then to present that. Is that right? To then present the evidence that they've got, even though there's not a person to bring it.
Yes, I believe so. So the prosecutor would introduce
Damien
that
Loon would have been on the
evidence.
stand giving that evidence potentially. Yeah.
So it's very sort of very, very interesting. But then also over those 40 years, and we've spoken about this in other cases as well, a lot of evidence, physical evidence, went missing.
Yeah.
Things, over the time, yes, more and more was put in that box that originally had one piece of paper, but, police stations move and evidence gets lost and statements are, go from being paper-based to digital and things don't get scanned properly. So there was stuff like that happened in this case as well.
Yeah.
And then I guess you think about things that records that do get lost, bank statements, phone records, because the other thing is, that phone call that supposedly took place at the baths on the day that Lynn went missing, that's never been able to be proven whether a phone call actually came in that day or not, because it wasn't investigated at the time. And the records, they only have to stay, I don't know, say it's 7 years. I don't know how long it is, but it's not 40, you know?
No, they spoke to the people who were working that day at the baths, and they like, how do you remember 40 years ago, did you receive a phone call and pass the phone on to Chris? Yeah. I think there was because at the time there was a young girl, I think it was, that was working there, who has a recollection of some sort of potentially, she's like, maybe I called him and said, hey, come to the phone, Lynn's on the phone. That's what he says happened. And she can't really say yes or no to that. Yeah. She's like, oh.
Maybe.
Because she goes, I would have definitely have done that. Over the course of the time of working with Chris at the baths, that exact scenario would have occurred. Yep. Lynn would have rung him there, you know, every second shift potentially.
Yeah.
And she said, I have definitely done that. Did I do it on that date, on that day?
As if you would remember. As if.
Maybe.
Unless you kept it. But even if you kept, you don't know. Oh, it's just too much.
Yeah, would you have even written that in a journal on that day to say you did that? Because at that point in time, she wasn't reported missing. It wasn't like until 6 weeks after the fact that she was reported missing she could have even potentially have been questioned by a police officer. And even then, 6 weeks ago, did you answer a call from Lynn? Again, I don't know.
Even when the... even when he reported it 6 weeks later, the police didn't do anything. They didn't go and look for witnesses or look to corroborate his story at all.
No.
You know, they didn't check.
They didn't do that at that point even. But even if they had, I think it would have been difficult to remember. Like,
you better remember who you know, in a place like that where you're taking phone calls all day.
Yeah. Like because especially then there was no mobile phone. So any phone calls that were going to be made to employees were made at that phone. I'm sure she took a phone call and said to, you know, anyone there, you know, at some point, hey, your wife's on the phone or your mum's on the phone or, you know. Yeah. So it just, it would be impossible to remember that sort of thing. But on the phone call situation, he said that he would spoken to Lynn a number of times over those days of those first initial days of her missing. What? So she was ringing you but no one else? Like, that's very convenient.
And her mum didn't call. Like, so her mum actually said that. It wasn't in a statement or anything. I think it was in her journals. I
think she wrote something in there about it.
Brother,
might have been.
She'd spoken to Lynn's brother Greg about it.
Yeah.
But her mum basically said, like, Lynn knew I had the girls because she would have known I would have taken them. Mm-hmm. And if she's phoned home to Chris and wanted to speak to the girls, he would have said that the girls were with me.
Yeah.
So she would have called.
Yeah.
Like, that even... You know, she couldn't believe that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that she couldn't believe that it, I don't know,
she didn't want to believe that it was Chris. Like, you know,
I think you're right. I think she didn't even really consider, I don't know what she thought.
When we're talking,
actually.
You know, early 80s, we didn't have the knowledge we have now of what's been put together of that, you know, these sorts of domestic violence murders occur and that, you know, it's perpetrated by people within knowledge of, you know, family, husbands, you know, those sorts of people are who perpetrate this. I think there was still a mindset of this sort of thing happens by strangers. You know, strangers do awful things to us, not people we know. Whereas we now know that these sorts of things, 90% of the time, it is someone who's known and known intimately to that person. So with the knowledge of that in our mindset, we would be definitely jumping down that, and to the point where, you know, you see the husband on the TV when someone goes missing and you're like, looking for something because clearly he's suspect number one.
Yeah.
I think in the 80s he wasn't suspect number one. The husband wasn't.
I think you're right, and you've got to think about it in that context, but it's really hard to think about it like from where we're sitting right now.
Well, in the second trial, I find that one really hard to put a lens on it of 80s compared to us now.
Totally.
Yeah.
In that verdict, Justice Harrison stated, I'm just going to read out what he said about the circumstantial evidence. He said, the circumstantial evidence in this case, considering as a whole, is persuasive and compelling. None of the circumstances considered alone can establish Mr. Dawson's guilt, but when regard is had to their combined force, I am left in no doubt. I am satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that Dawson's murder of Lynette is the only rational inference. Mm-hmm. He was resolute in his finding.
Absolutely no
ifs,
issue.
Ands, or buts.
No, he was beyond a reasonable doubt, that's for sure.
I mean, the things that the the evidence that they had that they put to court to basically get him to this point was witness reports of Dawson committing acts of violence against Lynn, the deterioration of the marriage, which was reported by Lynn to lots of different people, Dawson's affair and infatuation with JC, witness accounts of Dawson's violent, aggressive and controlling behaviour, and the unlikelihood of Lynette disappearing of her own will and leaving her children, financial access, and all possessions behind.
Yeah.
She didn't even take a handbag.
No wedding rings, anything. No.
So that's all the things that, Justice Harrison, used in order to give the finding that he gave.
Yes.
Do you want to go to...
Well, so
next?
The sentencing, did you...
Oh, did I say?
I think so. So he was sentenced to 24 years in prison with a non-parole period of 18 years, which, I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot for killing somebody in some ways, but I think was being factored in that his age at the time.
I
think
72
75
or 74, something like that. He was over 70.
Old. So I think that was being factored into the sentencing, that obviously 24 years, chances are he won't be alive anyway.
And even if he gets out, he's going to have no...
Yeah. So the family also then after this with so he's got obviously a parole period, I think it's 2041 he'd be eligible for parole. And so there's actually, they have put into law something that was there anyway, which we've discussed in another case, that could be used, but now it must be used, is this no parole, no body, no parole. So basically, unless he is going to come up and go, yep, this is where Lynn's body is, this is what happened, he cannot be considered for parole in 18 years anyway. So that additional 6 years that's being added, it will be seen because he's not talking. So, yeah, we're looking at a full sentence anyway. But then what came of it too was obviously this JC was then brought forward a further charge on Chris for his cardinal knowledge of her during her time as a pupil of his. So this is where the law gets really icky in terms of what the law was back in 1981 compared to 2020, 2022 when this was. But obviously we have very different knowledge these days to, children's brain development and when they should be considered as, giving consent, etc. But also the fact that there was this link towards the fact of not only did this blows my mind that literally someone could have had sex with this girl who was 16 but not be their teacher, and that would be okay. But because she was his student and she was under the age of 17, so that meant that he can't have sex with her while he's her student. But the day she turns 17 and is no longer his student, either of those two things. So she could still be 17 and be his student, or the other way around. And he can have sex with her then, which that just blows my mind that law was back then. So the trial took place. So she had to prove that she was 16 and still his student when they first had sex, which would have just been...
Imagine having to, as a
awful.
Victim, having to prove, horrible.
Oh, to go through all that.
Thankfully.
She
had friends, she had witnesses. There was there another school teacher who testified for her?
Oh, I can't remember.
I feel like there was a teacher or maybe a school administrator.
Someone who witnessed things. There was definitely people who said, there was witnesses that said that they came into the office, into Chris Dawson's office and found him, straddling her on the desk, and that was basically that's right. The girl had come in to say, I can't do sport today, and put a note on the desk. He was like, put the note down, whatever, out you go. They didn't move from their position of being in this intimate position. But so there was witnesses of those sorts of things. The trolley boy that we talked about in episode 1 around how he bailed him up at Woolies or whatever and said to him, stay away from her, that obviously was being very protective of her and that she was his, not someone else's.
Not protective,
just
possessive.
awful. Yeah, exactly. So there was many witnesses, but particularly this witness that was named CD, who came forward in this trial, where she discussed where she remembers being. So Chris and Paul ran these fitness classes outside of school hours, and all the girls from the school would be there. So they would be running these. One of the twins would do like one song of the fitness class, and then they'd swap over, and the other twin would run the class while the other one was in a back room with a 16-year-old girl.
Now, I have also heard, I've only actually read this in one place, but I did read that there were instances where both men, so Chris and Paul in the same room, having sex with different girls.
Yes.
Girls.
Yes.
So there was sexual, I'm just getting total White Lotus vibes here. Oh. Have you watched it?
Yes.
Oh, my God. Yes. Patrick Schwarzenegger. But, oh, my God, that is fucking disgusting. You're having sex with a girl next to your brother who's also having sex with a girl in the same room. Ew.
There have been allegations that they both then would participate.
Yeah, see, this is the White Lotus vibe bit. That's the thing, right? So they're having this group sex with their brother. Like, it's bad enough.
Yeah. And then we're flicking back to that beginning of our last episode where you brought up around that Checkers interview.
The checkerboard interview.
Where they
like,
brought up
it's not sexual. It's not sexual.
Clearly,
intimate. Well, it's not sexual.
Well, we think it might have been.
Yeah.
So how long had that been going on between the two of them?
Yeah. I mean, they were talking about that before they had kids.
Yeah.
So
pre this. Yeah. Because there was other times where they were in the pool together, and there'd be one couple down one end of the pool, and Paul and his girl at the time down the other end of the pool. And we're talking 16, 17-year-old girls.
And we're talking unclothed.
Yeah.
At least topless.
Yeah.
Probably.
Mm-hmm. So again, that was a judge alone trial as well. And at the end of that, the judge found very clearly that JC was telling the truth in that she was only 16 and had not turned 17, and also that at that time she was his student. So he was convicted of that as well. He was sentenced for that an additional 4 years and 2 years on parole, I think. At the end of the day, it only actually added an extra 12 months onto his full sentence. But again, 12 months onto his parole ability.
Right.
But he's not going to get that parole.
No.
So we're actually talking the full amount. I think he's now up to about, I want to say he has no chance of getting out before 2042. 45 it might be, yeah. And so he'll be dead by then.
Yeah.
He's well into his 90s by that stage. Yeah. So he won't be. He'll be living out his life in prison.
Well, he'll be a year off 100 then. He'll be 99 then. So, will he? No, he'll be early 90s.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, because they could only chart, like, as we're saying, that they could only use the law of the day of when it happened and not today. And so the judge had to be very careful around what sentencing that he could give as well, because it had to be the maximums and things of that law of that day, whereas we just know so much more of that this 16-year-old should not be held accountable at all for any of this, and that she was groomed and that's wrong, whereas the lens of the 1980s was that was grooming. They didn't know what grooming was, so... Well, that would be as difficult as a judge, I think. Hard enough as us onlookers to... Because you hear the sentencing for that and go... That's fucked up. That's so bad.
Inappropriate.
But it was
like woefully low.
In the context of the law that was in place at the time they had to go by, but also the context of his age, taking into account all those sorts of things. It's kind of, what do you expect? It's going to play out as it's going to play out, that he's going to live out his life in jail.
Yep.
As he fucking deserves. It shits me up the wall that he has lived the majority of his life outside of those walls of prison.
It's worth saying he remarried to a woman named Sue after his marriage to JC ended, and they're still married to this day.
Yeah.
What she knew or didn't know. I mean, he lived in Queensland, so he moved permanently to Queensland after his relationship breakdown with JC.
Oh, he moved to. They moved to the Gold Coast. The two of them.
So then, did JC move back to?
I think she must have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much his new wife knew about all this before it came to the fore, but he would have thought he got away with it.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And the arrogance of him would be that, yeah, like, what the hell? Why are you all talking about this? This was so long ago. Like, whatever, get over it.
Yeah. But then thank God for the teacher's pet, because I really don't think that this would have come to the fore, and I don't think he'd be in prison now if it wasn't for Headley's investigation.
Absolutely. Yep. He managed to flush out so much more of what it was and to bring it to the – this is the thing. I don't think the DPP would have prosecuted and arrested him if there wasn't the public interest in it, because it was going to keep being pushed, like, you know, come on, are you serious?
Cost of it, and they're like, you know, it's 40 years ago. Like, you know, and these trials do cost millions of dollars. The taxpayers millions of dollars. Yeah. So there's got to be justification and good reason to, which is fair, that's fine.
Yeah.
But thank God there was that public push. And the other thing that I've heard Headley interviewed many times, but one of the things that he says is, in cases like this, the police need to work with investigative journalists because they have money, they have time, they can dedicate, like Headley dedicated 2.5 years solely on the teacher's pet.
Yes.
So he had the backing of the Australian. It absolutely worked to their advantage.
Oh, absolutely. It was worth it.
It was worth it. And all of the ones that he has done subsequently, because he then went on to do the teacher's trial where he covered the full trial. He's gone on to do Shandy's story. There's so many. The Night Driver. There's so many that he has done that have all led to
Bronwyn's his latest one, isn't it?
Yeah, Bronwyn. Yeah. Which have all led to some resolution in the case or some pushing forward of the case. So, you know, we need to be thinking about investigations of these things in a different light. And I think the teacher's pet has shown us that's, you know, that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
The media can be very powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Last thing I just want to say too was at the trial, when the conviction was read out, did you know about his response? So he thought the cameras had been turned off because it was actually he was actually in prison because they asked for him to not be brought in all the time into the courts because he was frail and, you know, like, so that's hard, no worries. So he was on video link, and he thought that the cameras were all off on the video link from the courts, and he responded with fuck. I just love that he was pissed off.
Yeah.
Suck shit, mate.
Suck shit.
Yeah.
But I mean, he knows he's done it. Like, although he's exhausted.
Convinced himself, I reckon, that he hasn't done it for something. But yeah, I don't know how do you live your life knowing you've taken the mother of your children's life? How do you live with yourself?
And like, at the end of the day, money's money. I know money's important, but for fuck's sake, if he had have divorced Lynn in 1982, financially they both would have been fine by now. It would have moved on. They would have been okay. You know, that, as I said, they weren't destitute. Yes, your life changes when you get divorced. Yep. Yes, of course you don't have the joint assets of the family.
You make the choices you make.
That's it. And like, fucking just divorce her. Don't kill her.
Yep.
Seriously, dude.
Yeah. It's just, seriously.
All right, should we leave it there?
I think we've
done.
Oh,
you know what I just realised?
what's that?
I haven't looked to see what we're investigating next week.
I do.
What?
I know. I know. But I you know why I know? I know this because someone's been hassling us to do it.
I know exactly now that you say that.
I love this. So one of our regular commenters on Instagram, I think. Oh no, she's all over the place. She's comments everywhere.
Spotify,
Nicole,
Instagram.
otherwise known as Nudes. Love your work.
Thanks, Nudes.
But Nudes has been very, very, very keen for us to do a particular case.
Every time she comments, she suggests.
I'm still waiting. Well, here it comes, Nudes. So next week we are doing the Claremont killer. Yes. So we're here for Claremont.
There is a lot to that case, and oh my God, it's a heart-wreshing one.
Yeah.
But it's also one that I feel like has gotten a bit lost because there was a dramatisation. Oh my God, I'll find out this week when we look into it. But I feel like it's one of those cases that sometimes I'll say it to people, and I thought it was quite well known because I listened to a podcast about it. But even with you,
I followed daily, like the trial,
But then people don't know details, so this might be a good one.
I think actually it's one where I think in the trial was just starting. You're like, you're on this, right? And I'm like, huh? What? And I think that was when was like, oh my God, I didn't know about this one, and followed from then on. Like,
yeah, it's good.
But
it's a good case.
It is interesting, very interesting.
Very interesting case.
Yes, so we're looking forward to this one. It's just a big one, but we're here for it.
That's it.
And you nudes.
So join us next week for that. It's a big one, so join us for that.
Yeah.
Please, as always, like, subscribe, send us messages, DMs, follow us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube,
We're
of the
all
things.
there. We're there.
Everywhere. If you want to send us an email, you can at for all written out, TWO, crimebesties@gmail.com if you've got some case suggestions. And if you would like to buy us a coffee, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/2crimebesties. I think I didn't shout out the other day, but a tractor, my friend from work, bought us a couple of coffees, so thanks for that, tractor.
Love
I
that.
did thank her in person, but, love that. Thank you.
Yes, I love that.
Really appreciate it.
All good. Well, stay curious, Crime Besties. We'll see you next week.
Bye.